She didn't cry, not once. When the flight attendant asked her to move, when the passengers whispered, when the security stepped closer, she just held out a card. Laminated, official, ignored. At seat 3A, a 10-year-old white girl became invisible in plain sight. They didn't check her pass. They didn't ask her name, because they already assumed who she wasn't. But her silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. Because when they finally learned who her father was, it wasn't a child they had profiled. It was the daughter of the man who controlled the skies. And now, the whole plane is grounded. The plane hadn't even left the gate when it began. A soft chime echoed through the cabin as the last wave of passengers filtered into their seats. The scent of overused lemon disinfectant clinging to the air. The hum of the ventilation system masked the murmurs of tired travelers, earbuds already in, tray tables half lowered for the short domestic hop from JFK to Washington, D.C. Seat 3A, window side, sat a girl no older than 10. Lila Morgan, white, blonde, and small, with a navy hoodie zipped up to her chin and a lavender backpack tucked neatly beneath her feet. She wasn't swinging her legs or playing on a tablet. She just sat still, hands folded on her lap, eyes fixed on the safety card in front of her like it held the answer to a question no one had asked. She heard the footsteps before she saw the face. Click, click, click. Low heels on carpet. A flight attendant, blonde and crisp in navy polyester, stopped beside her row with a tight smile already half formed. Her name tag read Chloe. "Sweetheart," she said, voice as smooth as hotel jazz. "I think you're in the wrong seat." Lila blinked. "No, ma'am, this is 3A. Chloe's smile remained, but it twisted slightly at the edges, like she'd bitten into something sour but couldn't spit it out. "I understand, but this section is reserved for premium travelers. First 3 rows only. You might want to check with your parent." "My dad told me to sit here." Chloe crouched, now at Lila's eye level, still smiling. "Of course. Do you have your boarding pass?" Lila nodded, pulling a slightly crumpled ticket from the front pocket of her hoodie. Chloe took it, glanced quickly, then looked back up, almost too quickly. "This says business class," she said, as if the words were foreign. "Is this really yours?" Lila's voice stayed even. "Yes, ma'am." Chloe stood. "Okay, just stay right there for now. Let me double-check with the manifest." It could have ended there, but it didn't. Across the aisle, a man in a navy suit raised an eyebrow. "Kids these days," he muttered to no one in particular. A woman behind him leaned forward slightly, phone angled just enough to capture what she was seeing without being obvious. Not yet. Chloe returned less than a minute later, this time not crouching. "We may need to find you another seat," she said. "There's been some confusion." "I'm not confused," Lila said quietly. Chloe's voice stayed calm, professional, like she'd said this exact line before. "This section is typically for adults. Unaccompanied minors usually sit further back, for safety." "But I have a seat," Lila said. Chloe sighed, barely audible. "I'll be back," she said, this time with less smile and more walkie-talkie. Row 3B was now watching openly. A man clicked open his camera app. A woman behind Lila whispered, "She's got a valid seat. What's the issue?" No one answered. Minutes passed. The cabin grew warmer, the air thicker. A second flight attendant joined Chloe, this one older, brunette, with a badge that read Lead Crew. She didn't smile at all. "We need to verify your ticket," the second woman said. Lila handed it over again. Again they looked. Again they blinked. "This must be a mistake." "It's not," Lila said. Now the woman with the phone in row 4C hit Go Live. A red circle appeared in the corner of the screen. Recording. "Stratus Air," she whispered into the mic, "is questioning a 10-year-old girl for sitting in business class. No shouting, no swearing, just layers of disbelief wrapped in polite condescension." Lila stared straight ahead. "Is one of your parents on board?" Chloe asked again. "Yes." "In business class?" "Yes." "What seat?" Lila hesitated. He's in 1A. Chloe and the lead attendant exchanged glances. We'll verify that. More murmurs. Now from passengers, not just crew. She showed the pass. She's sitting quietly. What are they doing? The man across the aisle opened his camera too. Still, no shouting. Still, no threats. But the discomfort spread like ink in water. The woman with the live stream kept her voice low. This isn't loud, it isn't violent, but it's a problem. Lila folded her hands again. Her backpack strap had begun to fray, and she rubbed it with her thumb. Chloe returned one more time. No apology, just bureaucracy. Until we confirm your guardian's location, we'll ask you to sit near the rear. It's just protocol. Lila looked up, her voice barely a breath. But I didn't do anything wrong. I understand, sweetheart, but we have procedures. The man with the navy suit spoke again, louder this time. Are we really doing this? She's got a boarding pass. She might have been upgraded by mistake, Chloe snapped back, finally breaking tone. A laugh, sharp and uncomfortable, escaped someone in row 5. Wow, someone muttered. They really don't think she belongs. It started as a murmur, a harmless flutter of sound from the seatbacks behind her. Then, it spread like a slow leak from a pressurized cabin, uncontained and seeping into every row. Kids don't fly business alone, a man muttered behind his newspaper in 4C. She probably snuck up, came another whisper from 5A, not even pretending to lower his voice. Row by row, the buzz thickened, gaining weight not in volume, but in certainty. Not one word spoken directly to Lila, but every syllable aimed at her like invisible arrows. She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She had moved her lavender backpack from the floor to her lap, arms wrapped around it like armor. Her ticket still clutched in one hand. But the longer she sat there, the more that seat, her seat, felt like a courtroom. Across the aisle, Chloe stood again, clipboard in hand this time. The smile she wore earlier had evolved, sharper now, more performative. The type of smile that's not meant to comfort, but to control the narrative. I just want to make sure we're clear, she said sweetly. We're not trying to accuse you of anything, sweetheart. Lila nodded once. It's just that these seats are assigned through premium access, often through corporate travel, elite status, or government contracts. You understand, right? Lila said nothing. She didn't understand. Not really. She only knew her father had sent her to seat 3A because he always booked early, and because he trusted the system he helped build. Chloe tilted her head. Are you traveling with a chaperone? A family friend? Maybe someone checked you in by mistake? I'm traveling with my dad, Lila said. And he's on this flight? Yes. Chloe scribbled something on her clipboard. And what's his name, sweetheart? Lucas Morgan. The air didn't shift. Not yet. Chloe didn't react. She wrote it down without pause, like it was just another routine check, another detail to file away. Thank you, she said, stepping away. We'll look into that. From her seat, the woman in 4B, still recording, muttered into her phone, They're gaslighting a kid. She's sitting quietly with a boarding pass and they keep digging. This isn't protocol. It's suspicion disguised as concern. Across the cabin, a businessman in 2D lowered his laptop screen. Looks too normal for 3A, he said flatly. A laugh bubbled up from 5E. Yeah, I was thinking the same. Hoodie, backpack, no Louis Vuitton. Lila's grip on the strap of her bag tightened. I heard her say Morgan, another voice piped in from further back. Doesn't ring any bells. Then from 6A. Maybe she Googled a name and thought it'd scare them off. That happens, right? Chloe returned with another attendant. This one male, mid-40s, buzz cut, no smile at all. His tag read Matthew. Security protocol, he said bluntly. We've had impersonation incidents before. We're just doing due diligence. Are you saying I lied? Lila asked, softly but clearly. No one's saying that, Chloe replied quickly, before Matthew could speak. We're just trying to keep everyone safe, including you. Live viewership on the stream in 4B jumped from 400 to over 1,300. This is beyond ridiculous now, the woman said into her phone. They've checked her ticket 3 times. Now they're bringing in backup to verify her identity? While she's sitting silent with her pass in her lap? Back near the galley, a voice came from the flight deck. What's the holdup? The captain. Unconfirmed passenger match, Chloe called back. We're resolving it. The woman in 4B narrowed her eyes. That's not true. Of course it's not, her seatmate whispered. They're just hoping no one makes noise. But noise was beginning to ripple. A teenager in 7A whispered to her friend, I follow this woman streaming. She's viral. This is gonna explode. Back in row 3, Lila sat still as stone. The air had thickened with a kind of polite hostility. No one raised their voice, but no one came to her defense either. Yet. Every stare, every angled phone camera, every not quite whisper added another layer to the weight crushing her small shoulders. You sure your dad didn't book coach and someone just upgraded you by accident? Matthew asked now, his tone soft but condescending. No, because upgrades happen automatically sometimes, especially if someone enters the wrong info. I said no, Lila repeated. The woman streaming added a caption in real time. Little girl, valid pass, still not believed. Chloe flipped the clipboard and whispered something to Matthew. He nodded and stepped away, murmuring into a walkie. In the pause that followed, a man in 1C leaned into the aisle. Let me get this straight, he said loudly. You're delaying the flight because a 10-year-old looks too poor for her seat? No one said that, Chloe snapped. You didn't have to, he replied. Murmurs rose. Actual voices now. She has a boarding pass. She's not causing any trouble. Why not check her parent instead? Another caption went up on the live stream. The plane isn't grounded by turbulence. It's grounded by assumptions. Lila exhaled, long and slow. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. But inside, she wondered, if she looked just a little older, if her hoodie was a blazer, if her backpack was designer, would they even be speaking to her right now? Miss, Chloe said again, returning with a stiff expression. We'll need you to accompany us to the gate for clarification. No, Lila replied. It was one word, but it landed like a brick. No, I'm not moving. Matthew returned with a second walkie-talkie in hand. Security's en route, he said under his breath. 2 officers. Chloe turned to Lila. This is not an arrest. We just need to clarify. You're making this worse, someone yelled from row 5. All she did was sit down. Lila sat straighter. Her voice, when it came again, was calm. You didn't ask anyone else to prove they belong here. A beat of silence. Then a hand clapped. Another and another. One row, then another. Clapping. Not celebration, not defiance, but refusal. The laminated card wasn't flashy. It didn't gleam or glitter or announce its importance with holographic flair. It was plain. White background, federal seal in the top right corner, the name Lila Morgan printed in clear black font. Underneath, a single line. Authorized dependent of Federal Aviation Executive. Priority clearance, Class A. Lila held it in both hands, arms steady even as the cabin air thickened with suspicion. This is my ID, she said, voice still soft. My dad works for the FAA. Chloe stared at it for all of 3 seconds, then blinked once and leaned back. Honey, anyone can laminate a card. It's real, Lila replied. From across the aisle, the woman still live streaming zoomed in. Her mic caught every word. Anyone can laminate a card. The comment section exploded. What does that even mean? She's 10. Why would she fake that? FA executive's daughter. That name sounds familiar. Chloe didn't budge. Her voice had slipped from pleasant to PR damage control. Children don't always understand the difference between real and pretend documents. This could have come from a game kit for all we know. You think I printed this at home? Lila asked. Still no tears, just confusion, edged with insult. Chloe ignored the question. Instead, she turned to the male attendant, Matthew, and muttered under her breath. He nodded and disappeared toward the galley. The woman in 4B, whose stream now had over 4,700 viewers, spoke up. She showed you her ID. She's not disruptive. She has a boarding pass. What exactly are you still waiting for? Chloe turned slowly. Ma'am, for your own comfort, I'd advise you to stay out of the airline's internal protocols. The woman didn't blink. It stopped being internal when you turned this into a public interrogation. Are you threatening staff now? Chloe snapped. I'm recording, the woman said, lifting her phone higher. You just tried to invalidate a federally issued ID because it was laminated too simply. That's not just offensive, it's reckless. Lila hadn't moved. The card still lay steady in her hands. She didn't flinch when two figures stepped onto the aircraft. TSA blue uniforms, tight expressions. One male, one female. Both looked exhausted before the conversation even began. Matthew met them at row 2 and whispered quickly. The taller officer stepped forward. We received a call regarding a passenger verification issue? She's a minor, Chloe said, gesturing toward Lila. Alone. No confirmed guardian. Questionable credentials. Unverified ticket class. She has her ID right there, the woman in 4B interrupted. The officer glanced at Lila, then at the card. He didn't pick it up, only looked. This says FAA clearance. Yes, Lila said. The second officer, the woman, leaned closer. Her eyes lingered longer on the seal, then on Lila's face. Where's your parent right now? In seat 1A, Lila answered. Your dad? She nodded. And his name? Lucas Morgan. The male officer stepped back slightly. Not enough to be obvious, but enough. Still, Chloe pushed forward. That name doesn't come up in our manifest. The stream audience surged again. Comments flashed. They didn't even check 1A yet? Laminated ID is questionable now? What year is this? Lucas Morgan is FAA Level 1. He built that clearance system. They're scared now. You can see it. But Chloe's tone didn't soften. If anything, it hardened, the same way corporate tone always does when trying to bury a mistake mid-crisis. Regardless of what it says, we don't verify guardianship through homemade cards. If there's an issue, TSA will need to remove her until her adult arrives. She just told you he's here, someone said from row 5. Chloe turned again. Sir, please stay seated. The tension that followed was cold. Not explosive, not loud, just sharp. The officer with the female partner approached Lila directly this time. He crouched to her level, but not like Chloe had. This wasn't gentle. This is going to be easier if you cooperate. I am cooperating, Lila said. A beat. Then she held the card higher. I'm not making this up. You just don't believe me. From the rear of the cabin, someone shouted, Because she's a kid? Or because she's not dressed like a senator's daughter? Chloe spun around. Who said that? No one answered, but several phones lifted higher. The woman in 4B, never moving her phone from Lila, said calmly, There are two truths right now. She has ID. She has a ticket. Everything else is assumption. Chloe's voice cracked ever so slightly. That document is not recognized by our airline policy. It's from a federal agency, the woman snapped back. Chloe didn't reply. Matthew returned, holding a tablet. Still no confirmation in manifest for a Lucas Morgan. The female officer raised an eyebrow. You searched Morgan L? Or just Lucas? Just Lucas. Try again, she said flatly. Try the full name. As Matthew turned away, the male officer stood and spoke directly to Chloe. This doesn't meet threshold for removal under TSA procedure. She's not a threat. She's not combative. And she's not unverified unless you're ignoring the document in front of you. The tension cracked. Just slightly. Chloe didn't speak. She just took a step back. The murmurs swelled. She's been telling the truth this whole time. They were going to remove her because of what? Her age? They called TSA on a compliant passenger? Where's the accountability? Lila looked down at the card in her hand. then back at the faces now watching. This wasn't over, but something had shifted. They hadn't believed her, not when she spoke, not when she presented proof, but now. Now they were afraid of what might happen if she was telling the truth all along, and that fear was louder than any ID. The name had already been said, twice, once by Lila, and once by the officer. But it wasn't until it came through again, louder, clearer, that the cabin truly stilled. "My dad's name is Lucas Morgan," Lila said. This time, she said it not to the crew, not to the officers, but into the silence. Her voice reached further than her row, past 3A, past Chloe and Matthew. It rippled backward through rows of tense passengers, forward through the front of the cabin, past the curtain separating first class, and it landed like a warning shot. Sam Keller had arrived only minutes before, brought in from the gate by a panicked call from the lead crew. He was the floor supervisor for security at JFK's Gate 21. His tie was crooked, his face tired. But when he heard the name, something in him faltered. He didn't ask her to repeat it. He didn't question the pronunciation. He simply blinked, twice, and stiffened. "Lucas Morgan?" he asked, as though it were a test, as though maybe she meant something else. Lila nodded. "Lucas T. Morgan?" he pressed. Again, she nodded. A whisper surged through the live stream audio. "Oh my God," someone said from the rear. "Isn't that the guy who built the FAA's clearance platform? I thought he ran the control net system. Wait, that's her dad?" Sam's eyes flicked to Chloe. She stood frozen. Matthew's tablet screen dimmed in his hands. For one suspended moment, the air between them was thick with recognition. But then Sam did something calculated. He cleared his throat, turned toward the officers, and lied. "There's no record of a Lucas Morgan on this flight," he said flatly. "We've confirmed the manifest. No match." Lila looked up. "That's not true," she said. He didn't look at her. "Let's not escalate this further. We're following policy. No verified guardian, no match in manifest. TSA's recommendation will stand." The taller officer furrowed his brow. "We haven't recommended anything yet." Sam ignored him. "Ma'am," he said to Chloe, "continue with removal protocol." The silence that followed didn't feel like confusion. It felt like betrayal. From her seat, the woman in 4B, Tori Jensen, though few knew her name yet, spoke loud enough for the live mic to pick up. He recognized the name. Everyone saw it. Then he lied. Viewers watching the stream at home began screen recording. Comments flooded the feed. He paused before denying it. He knows. They all know. This just turned into a cover-up. Lucas Morgan is FAA Level 1. If he's on that plane, he outranks everyone. Someone from 2D stood up halfway. "I work in aerospace. That name isn't just familiar, it's protected. He's on the Federal Emergency Mobility Board. You don't lose him in a manifest." Chloe's hand trembled slightly now, though she kept her face still. "We're following airline policy," she said. "No, you're covering your mistake," Tori called out, "and trying to gaslight a 10-year-old because it's easier than admitting you messed up in front of 150 witnesses." Lila hadn't moved. She still sat, upright, hands on her lap, card resting on the tray in front of her. But her eyes weren't calm anymore. They were sharp, focused. "Call the captain," she said suddenly. "What?" Chloe blinked. "My dad said, if anything happened, to have them call the captain directly." Sam scoffed. "The cockpit is off limits during boarding." "I wasn't talking to you," Lila said, still not raising her voice. The woman in 6A clapped once. "Let her speak." From the front, the curtain moved. A moment later, the captain stepped into view. Mid-50s, crisp uniform, authority in every step. "What's going on here?" he asked, eyes scanning the scene. Officers, crew, Lila, and a dozen raised phones. Sam stepped forward. "Just a protocol issue. Unaccompanied minor, no guardian confirmation." "No." "She said her father is Lucas Morgan," someone interrupted. The captain paused. He looked at Lila, then at the ID, then at Chloe. then Sam, and something in his face changed. He didn't gasp, he didn't apologize. He simply said, "Give me a moment," and walked briskly back toward the cockpit. No one moved. Viewers surged past 12,000 on the live stream. Tori leaned into the mic. "Captain just went to verify, but I can tell you now, everyone here saw the moment this changed. They knew, and they buried it." Sam turned to Chloe, whispered something urgent. She paled. A man from 5C said aloud, "So, what happens if it is her dad?" No one answered. Lila finally spoke again. "They didn't ask who I was," she said softly. "They just decided what I wasn't." The cabin quieted to a whisper. No one even coughed. The captain returned, his expression unreadable. "She's correct," he said simply. "Passenger 1A is Lucas T. Morgan, cleared for priority boarding under FAA authorization, booking ID matches. He's on the manifest under internal classification code. That's why you didn't find him." Sam opened his mouth, then closed it. The female TSA officer stepped away from the row, arms folded. The live feed ticked upward. 15,000. 18,200. Still rising. Tori's voice dropped to a whisper. "That moment you hear the lie break? That's this, right now." The captain turned to Chloe. "You'll speak to my corporate liaison," he said coldly. "Until then, do not touch this passenger again." Lila exhaled. Finally, but not in relief, in resolve. This wasn't over. It had just been confirmed. And now, the wave wasn't suspicion anymore. It was consequence. The silence in the cabin wasn't peaceful. It wasn't the kind of silence that brings rest or order. It was sharp, unnatural, like air sucked out of the room, but leaving the pressure behind. After the captain confirmed Lucas Morgan was on board, after Chloe and Sam were visibly shaken, and after Lila was validated in front of nearly 100 passengers and tens of thousands of live stream viewers, you'd think it would be over. It wasn't, because no one apologized. No one said, "We were wrong." No one even offered her water. Chloe disappeared into the galley. Sam Keller retreated to the jet bridge with his phone pressed to his ear. And the crew? They moved around Lila like she was radioactive, untouchable, but still unwanted. Lila remained in her seat. Same posture, same face, still not crying. But this time, her eyes weren't locked on the seat in front of her. They were locked on the camera. Tori Jensen, still live streaming, whispered into her mic. "They know now. They've been told, they've been shown, and yet nothing changes." The comments poured in like a waterfall. "Call corporate. Tag the airline. Hatch Lucas' daughter trending in 10 states. She deserves an apology. On camera." Is the silence the new weapon? A user with a verified check tweeted, "The child just sat there. She had everything in hand, and they still treated her like a threat. Because bias isn't always loud. It's silent, strategic, and polite." Lucas' daughter began trending. In one New York newsroom, a producer flagged the stream. In DC, a junior staffer in the FAA's press office opened the clip on her tablet and gasped. Back in seat 3A, Lila tilted her head slightly toward the window. Not to look out, just to turn away from the dozens of eyes still watching her. Someone from behind finally dared to whisper, "She's famous now, huh?" Another replied, "That doesn't make this better." A third added, "Makes it worse, honestly." They only backtracked when they realized who she was. Tori didn't stop streaming. Her voice, calm and low, narrated. A little girl had a seat, a name, an ID. But because she didn't look elite enough, didn't wear the right brand, didn't come with an entourage, she was interrogated like a stowaway. And now that they know her dad controls the airspace, they go quiet. That is the silence that says everything. The comments began to shift from outrage to coordination. Boycott Stratus. Email FAA now. Tag the DOJ. Where is the apology? Passengers stayed still, phones glowing like stars scattered through the cabin. No one dared turn them off now. It wasn't about just filming anymore. It was documentation. Even the flight crew knew it. Matthew, now pale, returned briefly to row 3 with a small smile. "Would you like a drink, miss?" "No, thank you," Lila said. He nodded awkwardly and left again. Chloe finally emerged, her face tight. She stood 2 rows ahead and addressed the cabin like an HR rep reading a script. "We're working to resolve any confusion caused earlier during boarding," she said. "We apologize for any delays and appreciate your patience." Nothing about Lila, nothing about what happened, just confusion. The audience didn't buy it. Tori turned the camera on herself briefly. "They're calling it confusion, not profiling, not negligence, not intimidation, just confusion. And you wonder why people stop trusting systems built to protect them." The viewer count hit 31,000, then 40,000. Journalists across 3 networks clipped the moment Chloe's statement aired live. Side-by-side footage of Lila showing her ID played underneath a chyron that read, "FAA exec's daughter harassed by crew despite proof." At 3:07 p.m., a young flight attendant, no older than 25, whispered to the passenger beside her, "I think I'm going to quit after this." Someone behind them said, "They'll fire Chloe before they let this go viral." Too late. It was already viral. Sam Keller re-entered the cabin. His phone still pressed to his ear, but his eyes wide now. He didn't speak, just scanned the faces. He wasn't looking for Lila anymore. He was looking for who had power over the moment. And he couldn't find it. Not in the cockpit, not in the gate crew, not in the badge on his chest. It was in the phones, in the eyes, in the silence. Lila shifted again, reaching for her backpack. She unzipped it slowly and pulled out a small composition notebook, the kind with marbled black and white cover. No logos, no brand, just a girl and her thoughts. She opened to a blank page and began to write. Tori caught it in her stream. "She's writing," she whispered. "Right now. Not to cry, not to yell, just to remember." Commenters flooded in. "She's documenting, like her dad. They tried to erase her. She's writing herself back in." "We don't deserve this kid." At 3:10 p.m., a PR manager inside Stratus Air's Manhattan office drafted the first version of a corporate statement. At 3:12 p.m., a former flight attendant shared her own experience of being told to question anyone under 25 who doesn't look premium. At 3:13 p.m., a congresswoman quote-tweeted Tori's stream. "This isn't confusion. This is conditioning, and it must stop." Back in 3A, Lila finished writing. She tore out the page, folded it twice, and slipped it into her hoodie pocket. Then she looked up, right into the camera. No smile, no fear, just presence. Tori's voice cracked slightly. "She doesn't need their apology. She is the verdict." Chloe stood near the galley now, whispering into her comms unit. "Do we delay the flight?" she asked. From the other end, someone replied, "Delay's already happened, and the whole country's watching." The intercom clicked once, then twice. The sterile cabin noise faded just enough for the message to come through clearly. "Lead flight crew, please respond to comm channel 7. Repeat, comm channel 7. Chloe Barnes froze. She was mid-step, walking back from the cockpit toward row 3 when the call broke the air. Her heels stuttered ever so slightly on the carpet. Not enough for most to notice. But the ones watching, really watching, saw it. She turned on her heel and disappeared into the forward galley without a word. Tori Jensen leaned into her camera mic again, voice quiet but firm. That was not a routine call. You could see it in her face. That was a call from somewhere higher. Lila said nothing, but she lowered her pen, slid the notebook back into her backpack, and folded her hands again. Still, calm, unblinking. Passengers looked at one another, exchanging glances without speaking. Phones stayed raised. Nobody had forgotten the last hour. Nobody trusted silence anymore. In the galley, Chloe picked up the receiver and pressed the button for Channel 7. This is lead crew, Chloe Barnes. A beat of static, then a voice, calm, male, measured. This is Ops Control. Confirm. Is passenger Lila Morgan currently in seat 3A? Chloe swallowed. Affirmative. Another pause. Then, have you confirmed identity of Guardian Lucas T. Morgan, FAA clearance level 1? Yes. Passenger 1A. And have you verified the laminated ID presented? Chloe hesitated. Yes, but no buts, Miss Barnes. FAA has already flagged this incident. We are receiving real-time escalation reports from the Office of Civil Aviation Oversight. You are instructed to cease all further verification or interaction with passenger 3A unless directed by FAA personnel directly. Chloe's hand shook. Sir, there's been confusion. The ID wasn't standard format and— Miss Barnes, the voice interrupted, with no hint of anger, just authority so sharp it sliced. You are not authorized to interpret federal format standards. Do you understand? Yes, sir. You are to resume standard cabin operations immediately. Any further interaction with Miss Morgan will be reviewed under FAA disciplinary protocols. Yes, sir. The line went dead. Chloe stood for a second longer, staring at the phone. Her reflection in the stainless steel panel beside it looked pale, older than when the flight began. She let out a breath, stepped out. From row 3, Lila watched her return. Eyes met, briefly. And Chloe, in all her years of customer service, PR training, and public interaction, did something she rarely did. She looked away first. She stopped 2 rows short of Lila and instead addressed the flight attendants at the front. Resume standard prep, she said, voice brittle. The murmurs started again, but this time, not as whispers. What was that call? Did someone override her? FAA? That had to be FAA. Tori Jensen whispered again into her mic. I think that was the call, the one she couldn't ignore, but now she's pretending it didn't happen. The comment feed agreed. Did you see her face? She went ghost white. FAA stepping in live? That's huge. She knows she messed up, but now she's trying to act like it's normal again? Still no apology, though. Lila finally spoke. Just one sentence. To Chloe. Clear, direct. Are you afraid of my dad? It wasn't loud, but it was loud enough. The cabin hushed like a school hallway after someone knocks over a chair. Chloe froze mid-step, turned slowly. I beg your pardon? Lila's voice remained steady. You didn't believe me. You told everyone I made it up. Now you've been told I was right. Are you afraid of him? Chloe didn't answer. She couldn't, because the truth was written all over her face. The call from above hadn't just been from the control center. It had come from a level of authority she couldn't pretend didn't exist. A level above her chain of command, above the airline, above her policies and procedures. Lucas Morgan wasn't just a name anymore. He was watching. Or worse, he didn't need to watch. Others were doing it for him. The phones caught every frame. The stillness. The way Chloe's lips parted, but no words came. The way her eyes darted. Not toward Lila, but toward the forward galley, as if hoping for rescue that wasn't coming. Tori turned the camera back to Lila. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten anyone. But that one question, that was power. And you can feel it. Another burst of comments. She's 10, and she just forced a grown woman into silence. This girl doesn't yell. She dismantles. Chloe Barnes, you just got airspace checked. In 2C, a man in a business suit muttered, they should have just apologized. Now it's too late. In 5B, a woman clapped once, then twice. It didn't catch on fully. But it didn't need to. Because for the first time since the beginning, Chloe turned and walked away without saying another word. And this time, she didn't walk like a crew member in charge. She walked like someone who had been grounded, not by turbulence, but by the truth. It wasn't the usual gateside buzz or a voice over the PA that signaled his arrival. There was no announcement, no applause, no grand entrance, just the unmistakable sound of authority stepping into a space it already owned. Down the narrow aisle of the aircraft, from the very front bulkhead where first class met cockpit, a man appeared. No badge, no entourage, no raised voice. Yet somehow, every conversation stopped, every seat shifted, every eye turned to face him. Lucas Morgan had arrived, and he didn't need to say a single word. He wore a tailored gray suit, the kind cut sharp at the shoulders but comfortable enough for travel. His face was clean-shaven, expression unreadable. Part tired father, part federal executive. The kind of man you wouldn't notice until you had to. The kind who never had to raise his voice because the room always lowered its volume first. He didn't walk fast. He didn't march. He simply moved forward, and the air moved with him. The silence that had hung like smoke in the cabin solidified into something heavier, reverent, almost holy in its stillness. Tori Jensen swung her phone toward him just in time. "There," she whispered to the camera. "That's the man they were pretending didn't exist." Passengers leaned toward the aisle, not to crowd him, but to confirm. Was this really him? The name that made TSA hesitate? The name that turned a laminated card into a litmus test for credibility? Yes. Lucas Morgan wasn't just real. He was here. Chloe Barnes stood near row 2, frozen mid-motion. Her fingers still wrapped around her comms device, eyes wide, complexion pale. When she saw him, truly saw him, her weight shifted awkwardly backward until her shoulder touched the cabin wall. She didn't speak. She didn't move. Because what could she say? He stopped beside her, didn't look at her, didn't glance at the passengers watching. He looked straight ahead, at row 3, at Lila. Their eyes met, for the first time since boarding. And then, slowly, Lucas turned his gaze to Chloe. Still no words, still no emotion. But the look, oh, that look, spoke volumes. Not as a father defending his child, but as a man standing before someone who had misjudged everything. Chloe's knees buckled slightly. She shifted her stance, gripping the wall behind her like turbulence had hit. And in many ways, it had. Because this wasn't the story she'd prepared for, not the escalation she'd expected. There was no angry parent ready to yell, no sobbing child needing comfort. There was a girl who had remained composed, and a father who was now calculating. "Mr. Morgan," Sam Keller began, rushing up behind from the gate entrance, panting slightly as if he'd jogged down the jet bridge. There's been some confusion regarding boarding and protocol. I've already contacted corporate. We're issuing statements. Lucas held up one finger. Not a hand, not a shout. Just a single, deliberate gesture that froze Sam mid-sentence. And then, for the first time since entering, Lucas Morgan spoke. Not to Chloe, not to Sam, not even to Lila. He turned his head slightly toward the cockpit. "Captain," he said, voice calm and crisp, "I'll need a moment." The cockpit door opened as if on cue. The pilot, still in uniform, stepped out and nodded. "Of course, Mr. Morgan." Lucas stepped forward into the galley. Chloe tried to follow. He didn't stop her with his hands, just with a look. She stayed behind. From row 4, Tori whispered into the stream. "This isn't a man arriving to console his daughter. This is a man here to audit the system." The comment feed went into overdrive. That finger shut down an entire supervisor. He's not mad, he's strategic. Chloe's done. Watch this become a training video for crisis response. This is what accountability looks like. Inside the galley, behind the curtain, words were exchanged. Not loud enough to hear. But not long after, the captain returned to his seat, face tightened. Lucas followed. He walked back to row 3, paused again, then spoke. To Lila. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I stayed in my seat," she said, almost a whisper. "I know," he replied. "That's why they'll move." And with that, he turned to the row behind her. Passengers, crew, cameras and delivered his second sentence of the flight. This incident is now under federal review. Nothing more, nothing less. Then he sat in 1A. The moment rippled outward. Passengers blinked, stunned. The flight crew didn't move. Tori's voice broke the quiet again. He didn't raise his voice, but somehow everything is different now. Even Chloe knew it. She slinked toward the galley again, her comms unit now clipped quietly to her hip. The controls she'd once held, soft power laced in protocol and polite dismissal, was gone. She had tried to make a child move, and now the system would move around her instead. It began with a phone call. Not to the airline, not to customer service, not to PR. Lucas Morgan didn't need middlemen. He called the Office of Aviation Operations, direct line. His voice was calm, his words few. He didn't raise his tone or threaten legal action. He simply gave a timestamp, a flight number, and the phrase, "Clear airfield protocol override. Immediate hold requested." Within 90 seconds, the plane stopped everything. Boarding halted. Jet bridge retracted. The aircraft was put in an operational freeze, grounded not by weather or mechanical failure, but by authority. By Lucas. By the man whose name had once been denied, ignored, erased. Now, no one could look away. Chloe Barnes, unaware of the call, continued pacing near the galley. Her posture stiff, face pale, steps uncertain. She hadn't spoken since Lucas returned to 1A. She hadn't dared. But then came the chime. Two tones, sharp, direct. The pilot's voice echoed across the intercom. "Lead flight crew, please report to the cockpit, now." Everyone heard it. Everyone felt it. Chloe glanced once at Matthew, who shrugged helplessly, then made her way forward. When she disappeared behind the curtain, the cabin held its breath. Tori turned her camera back on. The live stream count had climbed to 86,000, nearly double what it had been 20 minutes ago. Commenters were now naming federal statutes, pulling excerpts from FAA handbooks. He pulled an override. That's like DEFCON 2 for flights. They're done. She's done. Call it. This is Chloe's last flight. Back in the cockpit, the conversation was short. "Ms. Barnes," the captain said, barely glancing up, "you're being relieved of crew duties for this flight." Her mouth fell open. "Captain!" Instructions came from Aviation Oversight and the FAA Internal Board. "You're to remain off duty and await further review, effective immediately." I didn't. It's not a debate. Chloe stepped back like she'd been slapped. "I need to at least explain." "You already did. To a child. On camera. Repeatedly." The co-pilot didn't speak. Just passed her an envelope. Pre-sealed. Printed with the airline's internal code. SR Protocol Reserved Status. Chloe's breath caught. And just like that, she was escorted out of the cockpit and toward the galley by the junior crew member. Tori caught the moment on video. "She's out," she whispered to the stream. "No fanfare, no escort, just quietly removed from her own cabin." But it wasn't over, because next came Sam Keller. He returned to the cabin with a defensive expression, holding a tablet, trying to appear calm. But within seconds of him stepping onto the plane, a uniformed airport official appeared behind him. A woman, early 40s, badge displayed. Clear authority. "Samuel Keller?" He turned, startled. "Yes?" She extended her hand, not to shake, to take. "Your badge," she said. He hesitated. "Your access badge," she repeated, firmer now. "And radio credentials? Your clearance has been temporarily suspended pending investigation." Passengers didn't cheer, but they didn't look away either. Sam fumbled for his badge, unclipped it from his belt, and handed it over. The radio came next. No words exchanged, just silence. Then the woman stepped aside, allowing him to exit the aircraft. He looked back once, at Chloe, at Lila, at Lucas, and saw nothing welcoming in any of their eyes. When the cabin door closed behind him, It was like someone had exhaled for the first time in an hour. Tori turned the camera back on Lucas. He remained seated in 1A, legs crossed, hands on his lap, calm as ever. Then, softly, he said the words that would echo through the media for days. My daughter sat in the seat I assigned her. She followed the rules. She provided identification. She did not cause a disturbance. She did not raise her voice. A pause. They did. And then, his eyes lifted to meet the lens of Tori's camera, because he knew exactly where to look. I will not allow an industry built on trust to operate on fear and assumption. The stream chat exploded. He's not just defending her, he's rewriting the policy. That line will be printed on a wall someday. Lucas Morgan didn't raise his voice either, but you felt it. Lila watched from her seat. No tears, no fist pumps, just quiet understanding. Her dad wasn't here to protect her. He was here to correct the system, and everyone knew it now, even the airline. At 4:12 p.m., Stratus Air issued its first internal memo. Immediate review of passenger handling protocols involving minors, effective top-down evaluation of crew discretion, and manifest override incidents. At 4:25, CNN ran the headline, FAA exec grounds flight after daughter profiled by airline crew. And at 4:30, Lila finally opened her notebook again. On a fresh page, she wrote 3 words. They moved first. Then, without ceremony, she tucked the notebook away, because she knew the rules had changed. And for the first time, the system was listening. The ripple wasn't local. It didn't stay inside the cabin, or the gate, or even the terminal. By the time Lucas Morgan's final words echoed on live stream, the shockwave had already reached headquarters. At 4:41 p.m., every executive at Stratus Air was summoned to an emergency video conference. The call was labeled Priority Level Red. The subject line read only 3 words, Flight 6123, Morgan. The footage was already playing, multiple angles, some from Tori Jensen's stream, others from passengers who had captured quieter moments, Chloe's denial, Sam's dismissal, TSA's hesitation. But it was one clip, played on loop, that froze the room. Lila, sitting still, holding her laminated ID. Chloe's voice, anyone can laminate a card? And Lucas Morgan's calm reply, she followed the rules. They didn't. No one spoke during the playback. Then, the head of legal finally said it. We are facing a federal-level discrimination claim, possibly more than one. The VP of Operations, pale and sweating, added, the FAA is already drafting audit orders. This could trigger a full-blown procedural reset. But the real blow hadn't landed yet. Because just as the legal team began outlining damage control, the head of HR received an encrypted email from an internal employee inbox. Subject, Chloe Barnes, pattern of misconduct. Attached, 8 video files, all date stamped from the past 2 years, all from Stratus flights. Every clip showed Chloe confronting young passengers in business class. None were disruptive, none were aggressive. But in each case, Chloe questioned their seating. Always young, always traveling alone, always non-standard in appearance, hoodies instead of suits, backpacks instead of briefcases. One clip showed her saying, business class isn't for kids unless they're with someone who belongs here. Another, we've had too many accidental upgrades lately. You understand. The final clip in the chain was time-stamped only 3 months before Lila's flight. It showed a young boy, about 12, being asked to leave 2A. The kicker? His last name, Rodriguez. The email ended with a single line. She's not the only one doing this, but she's the only one who got caught on Morgan's plane. The internal Slack channels at Stratus exploded. Anonymously, employees began adding to the thread. It's not just Chloe. This is how we were trained to spot out-of-place passengers. It's an unspoken practice. Visual alignment before manifest check. I've watched flight leads tell new hires to trust instincts. That was always code. They told us, young passengers without business attire, always verify twice. The term systemic profiling wasn't officially used yet, but everyone knew that's what it was. Back on the ground, the media hadn't missed a beat. News networks dug into the identity of Chloe Barnes, former Delta contractor, promoted to Stratus lead crew 2 years ago. No public infractions, but whispers began to emerge from former co-workers. An ex-attendant posted anonymously on Reddit. "We had a list, not written, but taught. Look for solo travelers under 25, especially if they're kids of color or look too casual. Make them explain their seat." The idea was seat protection, but it always felt wrong. Tori's stream, now pinned by multiple verified journalists, added fuel to the fire. She narrated new clips daily, including one where Chloe glared at a 12-year-old girl in a hoodie and said, "Maybe you're just in the wrong row." That girl wasn't Lila. That girl was Ayanna Green. She was now trending too. Ayanna 2. Rodriguez, A. Not just Lila. What had begun as a single incident was now clearly a pattern, and Lucas Morgan hadn't even made a public statement. Yet, the power of that silence terrified corporate more than 1,000 hashtags, because it meant he was still watching, still deciding, still gathering. Meanwhile, at the FAA's DC office, an internal report circulated titled, "Unverified Passenger Interrogation Practices Among Domestic Carriers." Lucas's name was listed as co-author. It was dated the year prior. They'd known this was happening. Lila just happened to be the tipping point, because for the first time, the system picked the wrong child. Not just someone who could tell their story, but someone whose story couldn't be ignored. Back on Flight 6123, the mood had shifted. Lila sat quietly, flipping through her notebook again. She wasn't drawing this time. She was writing. Tori whispered to her stream, "We're witnessing the moment when one girl, just by sitting still, forced an entire industry to look at itself." The chat responded, "She's not the first victim. She's just the first irrefutable one." Privilege didn't protect her, but power did. Imagine how many Ayanna Greens never had a Lucas Morgan. This isn't about one seat anymore. It's about how many were taken away. And so the cabin remained still, not silent from fear, but from realization. The tremble wasn't just within Stratus Air. It was spreading to every airline that had ever trained a crew to trust their instinct when deciding who did or didn't look like they belonged. And Lila? She just wrote one more sentence in her notebook. "It started with a seat, but it ends with a shift. The public only knew one Morgan. Until now." The name Lucas Morgan had dominated headlines, hashtags, and government memos since the incident on Flight 6123. He was the executive, the insider, the calm force who had grounded a plane and then an entire system, without shouting, without demanding. But while the world focused on the father, the one who stopped everything in the sky, they forgot to ask, where was the mother? They wouldn't be wondering for long. At 10 o'clock a.m., 1 week after the video of Lila went viral, a quiet ripple moved through Capitol Hill. The hearing room wasn't packed yet, but the air was already tense. Committee members shuffled notes. Journalists refreshed their feeds. C-SPAN's live camera adjusted its angle toward the central witness table. Nameplate: Anna Whitmore Morgan, Esquire. Role: Lead Counsel. Civil Action Case Number 7821, Green, et al. v. Stratus Air Group. The room didn't react at first. Most hadn't connected the name, or didn't realize who she was. But those who did, they froze. Because Anna Morgan wasn't just a concerned mother here to speak about her child's trauma. She was the lead attorney for a class action lawsuit involving 8 families, all of whom had children profiled, interrogated, or forcibly relocated during domestic flights by major carriers over the past 3 years. Lila's story was simply the last straw. Anna adjusted the mic. No emotion, no notes, just presence. "Chairwoman Ellison, members of the committee," she began. I am not here as a grieving parent. I am here as a witness to a pattern, a system that treats certain passengers not based on boarding passes or clearance, but based on how comfortable they look to a flight crew. She paused. I am also counsel for 8 families, 2 from Georgia, 1 from Illinois, 1 from Texas, and 4 from here in DC, all of whom have experienced incidents disturbingly similar to my daughter's. Children traveling alone, or with non-traditional guardians, or simply looking young, brown, poor, or out of place. The screen behind her lit up. Images from the viral footage. Lila in 3A, the laminated ID, Chloe's dismissive stance, the frozen face of Sam Keller. Then, Ayana Green in a hoodie, Mateo Rodriguez in 2A, a 6-year-old Sikh boy from Dallas crying beside a crew member holding his torn ticket. Anna continued, voice steady. They were removed, relocated, questioned, or shamed. Not for what they did, but for what they looked like. And when my daughter, a white child, finally faced the same treatment, it proved what these families already knew. This wasn't about race alone, or age alone. It was about power, and who the system thought had it. Gasps echoed through the live stream. Tori Jensen, now seated behind the panel, posted the clip immediately. Anna Morgan isn't just Lila's mother. She's the legal weapon behind every family they ignored. The hashtags shifted again. Not just the father. Anna Morgan-esque. System on trial. Anna didn't stop. Stratus Air and several other carriers have relied for years on a discretion clause, allowing flight crews to remove or question any passenger who causes disruption or uncertainty. But the term uncertainty has become a mask, and under that mask is bias. She reached into her folder and pulled out a single sheet. No graphics, no dramatic charts. A transcript. In this documented training session, a Stratus crew lead says, and I quote, "Watch for kids who don't look like they belong in business class, especially if they're alone, especially if they're not dressed right." Another pause. Not dressed right. That's the protocol. From the panel, one senator leaned forward. "Mrs. Morgan, Ms. Senator," she corrected calmly. The room blinked. "I retained my surname when I passed the bar, and I kept it when I filed this lawsuit. My husband grounds planes, I dismantle policies." And there it was, the twist no one saw coming. She wasn't the silent supporter behind the executive. She was the one shaking the foundation while the cameras watched the surface. Back in the press room, a journalist whispered to her editor, "We've been chasing the wrong Morgan." Anna laid out every document, timeline, training video, whistleblower statement, financial report showing payouts for passenger incidents matching demographics of the affected families. She ended with a closing line no one expected. "I didn't raise a daughter to sit in silence. I raised her to sit still so that the system would have to move." Applause wasn't allowed in the chamber, but outside, Twitter, TikTok, and every media outlet exploded. She just dismantled the defense in under 8 minutes. No emotion, just facts. That's more powerful than any outrage. Lucas grounded a plane. Anna's grounding the system. They played chess with a child, but forgot she had 2 grandmasters at the table. Later that afternoon, news broke that the Department of Transportation had formally launched an inquiry into discretionary bias in all major U.S. airlines. At 5:23 p.m., a photo circulated online. Anna and Lila walking side by side through the Capitol steps. No bodyguards, no podium, just a mother and daughter, both quiet, both deliberate. One had sat still, the other had stood up, and together, they were rewriting the sky. No one expected it to pass that fast. Most legislation takes months, sometimes years, to crawl through committee halls, debate chambers, and final votes. Especially bills sparked by single events, no matter how public or emotional. But Lila's law wasn't just a reaction, it was a reckoning, and America was ready for it. At 9:12 a.m. on a cool Tuesday morning, the United States Congress convened for a final vote on Bill H.R. 7821, formally titled the Fair Passenger Protection and Child Verification Act, informally known across the nation as Lila's Law. At its core, the bill was simple, but its implications were massive. No child holding a verified business or first-class ticket may be asked to relocate without independent third-party verification of seat validity and guardian identity. All domestic commercial aircraft must be outfitted with 24/7 in-cabin security video recording, accessible in real time by FAA monitoring personnel. Airlines are banned from using discretionary visual assessments as grounds for passenger interrogation or reassignment, particularly when based on age, race, dress, or presumed status. The vote passed in the House, 418 to 11. Then in the Senate, 96 to 2. Unprecedented, bipartisan, irrefutable. As Chairwoman Ellison signed the final copy, she said just 6 words into the mic. Because no child should prove they belong. At home, Lila watched it live on TV. She didn't smile or cry. She didn't jump around the living room or run into her parents' arms. She just whispered, "It's real now." And it was. By noon, the FAA had issued formal compliance notices to all U.S. commercial carriers. The deadline, 6 months. Every airline was to submit cabin refit plans, independent verification protocols, and new anti-bias training standards or face penalties. Stratus Air, they didn't wait for the warning, because they had already been hit where it hurt most. 2 hours before the vote, the Department of Transportation issued a $92 million civil fine against Stratus Air for repeated violations of passenger rights, systemic profiling, and obstructing federal passenger data during the Morgan inquiry. It was the largest fine in airline history, but money wasn't the headline. The world focused on the name, Lila's Law. Reporters said it with reverence. Anchors leaned into it like a promise. Teachers began including it in civics lessons. Students in debate clubs quoted it in their speeches. Parents told their children about it, about a girl who sat still, and how that stillness moved the country. Social media lit up with creative tributes. A child's drawing of Lila in seat 3A, laminated ID in hand. A remix video of Lucas's famous words, "She followed the rules, they didn't." A digital comic titled Skyline Justice, featuring Lila, Anna, and Lucas as modern-day guardians of the air. But the most powerful tribute, it came from the FAA itself. On the very seat where it all began, 3A on Flight 6123, Stratus Air installed a small silver plaque. It read, "In honor of Lila Morgan, the child who stayed seated and made the skies safer for all." Lila never saw the plaque in person. She didn't want to. "It's not about the seat," she told her mom. "It's about who didn't believe I deserved it." Instead, she focused on something else. With Anna's help, she began crafting a non-profit, Still Seat project, dedicated to documenting cases of travel discrimination, offering legal support to minors mistreated during flights, and pushing for international standards on airline bias. Within weeks, the project gained traction. Airlines from Canada and the UK reached out to collaborate. The EU Parliament submitted an inquiry to their own carriers. The ripple had become global. Tori Jensen, now hailed as the voice who kept the lens steady, published a best-selling memoir titled Clear for Landing: How One Girl's Stillness Changed Everything. In her final chapter, she wrote, "This wasn't a viral moment. This was a movement. We talk about turbulence, engines, and altitude. But the greatest shift in air travel didn't come from above. It came from a child sitting quietly in seat 3A who knew she belonged there and waited until the world saw it too." The cultural effect couldn't be denied. Late-night hosts joked about airlines scrambling to install cameras. Brands released apology campaigns with "We see you now" slogans. But under the humor was real reform. Lila's Law wasn't just a symbol. It was enforceable. It had teeth. And it came with numbers: 72% decrease in in-flight passenger relocation cases involving minors within the first 3 months. 54 airlines requested training modules developed by Anna Morgan's legal team. 83 whistleblower reports surfaced from other carriers, citing similar profiling practices, now brought forward under federal protection. Back in the Morgan household, things didn't change much. Lucas still left early for work. Anna still prepared briefs at the kitchen table. And Lila, she still did her homework at the counter, still wore her hoodie, still carried that same lavender backpack. Only now, inside one of its side pockets was a copy of the law that bore her name. Not laminated, just folded, just quiet, like her. Because Lila never wanted to be famous. She just wanted to be believed. And now, thanks to her, the next child who sat in seat 3A, or any seat, would never have to prove they belonged again. It had been 91 days since the world learned her name. 3 months since a child's silence became a national verdict. 3 months since the industry blinked and rewrote itself. Lila Morgan hadn't flown since. Not because she was afraid, not because of trauma, but because her parents insisted the system needed time to catch up to her. And now it had. Her laminated ID had become standard format. Her seat, 3A, was no longer just a row. It was a symbol. And today, she would sit in it again. The boarding pass was crisp, printed with new security font, and now marked with a green square next to her name. Verified minor, 3A. A national protection standard now embedded in every domestic carrier's system. Anna and Lucas walked with her to the gate. No press, no cameras, just parents, just presence. The terminal was quiet, but not silent. People recognized her. Some stepped back, some smiled, some whispered. None approached. It was respectful. And as they reached gate B13, Lila paused. Because standing just beside the door to the jet bridge, mounted on the wall between the boarding lanes, was a plaque, polished bronze, etched in bold serif font. In honor of Lila Morgan, the girl who sat still. So the system had to move. Gate B13, first boarding point of Lila's law. She didn't say anything. She just read it once, then again, then walked forward. Inside the aircraft, the new cabin crew was quiet, composed, trained in a policy born of her name, but even still, they looked nervous. The lead attendant, no older than 30, held a tablet to confirm her pass, hands trembling slightly. Lila handed her ID and boarding pass. The woman scanned it, and then she paused. Not because it didn't scan, but because it did. And because she'd been briefed, in training, in meetings, in simulations, but never in person. "Welcome aboard, Miss Morgan," the attendant said, and for just a moment, her voice cracked. Lila nodded. "Thank you." She walked down the aisle. Passengers shifted. One by one, row by row, phones went down, heads lifted, postures straightened. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't planned. But as she passed row 1, a man in a gray suit, stranger, not her father, stood up. Then a woman in 2D, then 3C. And before she reached her seat, half the cabin was on its feet. Not clapping, just standing, in silence. It wasn't applause, it was respect. Lila sat down in 3A. Same lavender backpack, same posture, same stillness. But now, every angle of that seat was under watch, not by suspicion, but by policy. A small security camera embedded near the exit sign blinked softly, standard now in every cabin. Her parents stood at the jet bridge. Anna gave one small wave. Lucas simply nodded. They didn't need to board this time. The world already had. Tori Jensen, watching from a nearby row, whispered into her phone, now turned to record for her personal archive. She didn't cry then, she doesn't smile now, but somehow, this is louder than anything we've seen. The feed was private. She didn't go live. Some moments weren't for clicks. They were for history. As final passengers boarded, a child across the aisle leaned toward her. "Are you really her?" Lila turned slightly. "Who?" The boy hesitated. "The one who stayed in her seat." Lila nodded once. "I just sat where I was told to." The boy grinned. "I'd have cried." Lila smiled, soft, quiet. "I almost did," she whispered. The captain's voice came on over the intercom, calm, steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flight 781 to Washington, D.C. Today, we are honored to have on board a very special guest. Though she needs no introduction, please direct your attention briefly to Seat 3A. The cabin turned. Not to gawk, not to record, just to witness. On behalf of every crew member trained under Lila's law, the captain continued, "We thank you for sitting still and teaching the rest of us to move." There was no standing ovation, no champagne, just reverent silence. The plane pushed back from the gate. Lila leaned her head against the window, the same window she'd stared out of months ago. Only this time, she wasn't wondering if she belonged. She was watching a system she'd changed move beneath her, and above her, the skies opened, not just with engines, but with equity. Somewhere below, travelers walked past the plaque at Gate B13 without noticing. Others paused, read, and whispered her name. But Lila didn't need to hear it, because in the soundless moments before takeoff, she had become something more than viral, more than powerful, more than protected. She had become permanent. 3A wasn't just a seat now, it was history.